What is up, guys? We are back. I'm outraged. This is one of the crazier recordings I've been forced to do. I haven't even been forced to do it, really. The reality is that, we're 22 episodes in doing this now, and we're coming off a week where we had some excitement. We had some excitement on the podcast. We had some excitement in the world of real football. Not in games being played necessarily, but what we've seen taking place is happening with the virus. We've watched it start to cripple Major League Baseball, and that's a problem. We've been talking about all along. Some of us have DM'd back and forth talking about, what could possibly happen. I stand by my belief that the reality is that we will see some missed games this year. And games that aren't canceled with a multitude of players that are not eligible to play, we're going to see a pretty poor brand of football on the field. And I wrote an article recently. Oh, my microphone is being a complete piece of shit. Please hold. Oh, no. Is it going to do this to Daddy right now? And I wrote an article recently on Patreon yesterday, just kind of briefly going through the idea of the value of handcuffs. They were never more valuable than they are right now, especially those that are high-end handcuffs. So, teams that have good offensive lines and high rushing volume. Dallas, New England, Minnesota. These are all teams you want to get behind. These are all teams that you want to own a running back in the offense, whether it's Green Bay, whether it's Buffalo. Having a handcuff in these situations is more valuable than ever. And, teams have always shopped us handcuffs. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, and in the article it was laid out. You may have been somebody who had Ezekiel Elliott, and suddenly here comes the guy with Tony Pollard banging on your door, right? He's showing up. He goes, hey. He goes, look, man, he's like that guy in downtown New York, trench coat, flips out both sides. He's got watches on this side. He's got rings on this side. Around back, he's got a van. He can make fake IDs. And he's like, look, man, you want Tony Pollard, man? You got Ezekiel Elliott. You have to have Tony Pollard, man. And he wants to railroad you for a first-round pick or something of that nature, when the reality is that Tony Pollard's not going to see much of the NFL field. Now, I have made the argument that going into 2021, if we extend the amount of NFL games based on the contract that Ezekiel Elliott was paid, doesn't it make the most sense for the Dallas Cowboys to relax his touches a little bit, to try to elongate the potential that he will be there for them when they get to the playoffs, right? That's what you want. So if Ezekiel Elliott's averaging 24 touches a game, maybe we see that drop to 20 touches a game, which necessarily puts Tony Pollard at 10 touches a game, 11 touches a game. It's not improbable that we could see almost a Ben Tate level of production with Ezekiel Elliott. The old days of Arian Foster and Ben Tate, go look it up if you're unfamiliar. It's absolutely possible if you have the high-end backup talents that are playing with great offenses, great offensive lines that have lots of volume. Quality volume. So I wrote that article and it made me think, and I got a message on Patreon, and it was a great point because I was thinking about this as I was writing the article. It literally crossed my mind, but I didn't put it in the article because I thought, it's too much to try to jam in here. It's way easier for me to, type out what I'm trying to say, but if I really want to get more detailed with it, then I guess the best way to do it would be to do it via a podcast, do it via an audio file, and that's probably the best bet. But Paul Hagen, I believe is how you say his name, goes, I've thought about that, but what if the running backs test positive and they're in the running back room with the other running backs? Wouldn't they all need to follow some kind of protocol? That's exactly what went through my head as I was writing this article, thinking about what's the value of handcuffs. I thought, well, if Ezekiel Elliott suddenly has COVID-19 and he's in the same room as Tony Pollard, whether Tony Pollard tests positive or not, that necessarily means that Tony Pollard has to fall under the protocol where he has to wait at least 72 hours with no symptoms, or at least since last symptoms had occurred. So it's a crazy thing. I don't know why I'm stammering thinking about this. So it's a crazy thing to think about because Tony Pollard in this example would also get dinged along with Ezekiel Elliott, potentially along with the running backs coach. There are so many different things that can take place in this scenario. You could lose a multitude of players all at one time. So it's a crazy theory to think about, but nonetheless, the value of the handcuff is greater than ever. Now, in a case like Tony Pollard, we know he's valuable, but we also saw him not run away with much opportunity in 2019. So it's a perfect example of a guy that maybe as a rookie flashed, and people thought, okay, well, he's going to be more than he is today in the future, and they tried to get big value out of him. But when the season was over, it was clear-cut and obvious that Ezekiel Elliott is the alpha, and without injury, it will remain that way. So Tony Pollard's value did decline a little bit from the hype that he had coming out of preseason and over a handful of games in 2019. So I will say he is cheaper than he has been right now. And that's just a fact because of recency bias. So those are the players, the Alexander Madisons, the Damian Harris, the guys that are, especially with Sony Michel coming off of his third preseason lower body surgery in 3 years. I mean, it's just incredible. And I thought Sony Michel was a value, and he was. But then the PUP list information came out, and the surgery, and all this came out, and suddenly things changed. We have to sort of reanalyze what's going on and look at what's going on in New England. And we're trying to figure out, who's the most valuable back. Well, I don't think that it's improbable that if Damian Harris opens the season as the first, second down grinder and does well, that Sony Michel might be in a running back by committee. And we've seen it happen in New England in the past. But here's another question. What happens if a coach comes down with COVID-19, the virus? An offensive coordinator. I mean, we just saw it with the Eagles. Doug Peterson, it tests positive for the virus. He is now quarantined from the team. It's not as big of a deal right now because we're so far removed from football. But what happens, again, if the Dallas Cowboys are in the meeting room and it's 2 days before the game and Ezekiel Elliott tests positive for COVID-19 and Tony Pollard was in the room and the coaches were in the room and all these other people were in the room and suddenly none of these players are eligible on game day? It could absolutely happen. It could happen with a quarterback. There's still time for players to opt out. We don't know who's playing in 2020 yet. There are so many questions. So I looked at it like, hey, this may be one of the best opportunities ever to go look at one of these backup running backs. Alexander Madison's another great example of one of these guys. High volume offense, a change in OC from Stefanski to Gary Kubiak. Still a guy who's got a multitude of high rush attempt seasons from his offenses over the years. Another argument is that Dalvin Cook, with his injury history and the volume that they want to see from him, is that in 2021, he may also be scaled back, especially if he signs a decent contract this year. So Alexander Madison could see more run as well going into 2021. So it just makes sense that you want these guys as an insurance policy behind your starters, or you want them in 2021 because these are some of the most likely running backs to get an increase in volume if we go to a 17-game season. But it's so tricky if coaches get the bug, right? It changes the whole dynamic. It changes the quality of the football being played. Again, it will change everything we see on the field. I mean, even Ian Rappaport, who goes on the NFL Network on one of his most recent broadcasts, was incredibly leery to state whether or not the NFL believed that players could actually test positive twice. They don't know. We don't know that yet. There's speculation that you can't get it twice, but that's not definitive. So think about this. Starting running back in an offense, again, let's go Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott comes down with the virus. Suddenly he's out 2 weeks. Tony Pollard didn't get it, so Tony Pollard's playing, right? Ezekiel Elliott comes back after 2 weeks. It's week 3 of the NFL season. He plays again. And after that game, we're halfway through the week, and suddenly Tony Pollard tests positive for COVID-19. But guess what? Ezekiel Elliott was in the same room. Ezekiel Elliott was around him, so now we have to necessarily suspect that he also has it. So what do? Does he go back into the protocol? Does he go back into the quarantine protocol? I mean, think about this. This could happen over and over and over and over again. There's no telling when this is going to stop. It's one of the more shocking things that I've been going through in my head, trying to understand, trying to rationalize how this is going to play out. Because it seems like everybody's getting it. Most of us probably believe that we've had it. A lot of us have not had it, whether you believe it or not. I've not been tested. I don't believe I've had it, but it's hard to say. I mean, we see people in the media all the time testing positive for it. Every day, other players are testing positive. I don't know many people in my personal life that have tested positive, and I'm doing my best to stay away from it and do my part. But the reality is that in this setting, with the NFL not providing a bubble like the NBA, there is a major risk to what is going to take place. So to me, these backup running backs have a lot of value. And if we're looking at them a year removed from their rookie season, that recency bias has since diminished, especially for these running backs that didn't see over 100 carries in their rookie season. And the value's a little lower. And I think you can go out and make a play on them today and better yourself in the future when inevitably one of your starting running backs comes down with something. And I'm not wasting my time on backup running backs in organizations or on teams that have terrible O-lines or poor prospects. These aren't the guys we're chasing. We're chasing the high-end upside backups that, of course, are more coveted by dynasty players. But again, the value has been suppressed, and I don't know that many people are thinking about it like this. And if you get spot starters for a couple of games, 3, 4, 5 games in the regular season, and we're not even calculating in the potential of an injury. I mean, that's always out there. That's always something that can happen. So that's in the back of our minds as well. So there's so many things working in the favor of the backup running back in 2020 that it's staggering. So you really should do your best effort to shoehorn these guys into deals if it is possible, because there's a lot of value. And if you guys missed the latest Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast, then you missed a goodie. I didn't listen to it myself. I was there for it live. I rarely listen to the episodes after they have aired, and I'm not going to go back and listen to this one because this episode is being considered one of the wilder episodes we've ever had, which is a shock. Because if you guys have been following along all these years, yes, literally years, then you probably feel like you've heard crazier episodes in the past. But the point of the episode was to discuss what the situation with Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Kansas City looked like post Damian Williams opt-out. But as expected, the show never got there. And Matt and I both knew that it never would. We didn't discuss it, but we knew that it never would. I mean, the show was supposed to be 1 hour long, and the show sheet had 2 topics on it. The Clyde Edwards topic, and then we were supposed to talk about Devin Funchess. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to talk about Devin Funchess. And I didn't. I actually abstained from talking about him on the podcast. I rolled out of camera view and let Matt do his one-man shtick on it, because I was not getting involved in that topic. And you guys don't know it, but I do. Matt had been teeing this topic up all week long with these constant DeAndre Washington tweets. This show was doomed from the jump. Go back. Look at the tweets. Look how they were organized. Look how they were angled. It was perfectly set up for a blowout episode, and we both knew it. And if you haven't heard the episode yet, then beware. I'm about to paraphrase most of it because I want to express my thoughts truly on how this went down. And I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to be very candid about what went through my head and my angle and what I perceived and how it went down. So most of you guys remember the 45-minute debate previously during our mock draft episode where I took Clyde Edwards at 101, and it went on for this big argument between, Jonathan Taylor and Clyde Edwards for 45 minutes. Well, after that episode, the table was always set, right? there was a definite division. There's always been division on the show between me and Matt. We've always taken a prospect, whether it was Jeremy McNichols and Deonta Foreman, or it was Zay Jones and somebody. We've always picked players of sort of equal value, if you will, and we've each just taken one. For whatever reason that is, it happens annually. But all this time, throughout the tweets and the shows and the posts, I noticed something that was irking me. And it was always in the back of my mind. So Matt has Clyde Edwards ranked in the top 2 of his rookie running back class. So these top 2. So Jonathan Taylor 1, Clyde Edwards 2. He also has Clyde Edwards ranked as the number 11 overall player in his dynasty rankings, which is fantastic. It's completely fair. That's exactly where I would have him. I think that's totally justified. But what I don't understand was why he would then verbally shred Clyde Edwards at every turn. The rankings didn't fit the words that were coming out of his mouth. And so this struck me as strange. I don't understand. Why is it that when you tweet or when we talk on the show, you take one angle, but on your rankings behind the paywall, it's the complete opposite. You're hailing this player as one of the more valuable players in fantasy football, nearly a top 10 value in fantasy football. But on the airwaves, a very different story. And, now I've been on the show long enough that I understand his approach. So I bring up who I believe Clyde Edwards-Helaire's closest comps are in terms of collegiate profile situation. I mean, he's mentioned numerous times on the podcast that Clyde Edwards-Helaire couldn't usurp Nick Brossette at LSU. You guys have heard it. It's been on the internet. It's out there forever. He said that if Clyde Edwards was so good, he would have taken the job earlier on at LSU rather than his final season, because I think most of us agree that Nick Brossette is probably not that great of a running back. He's not doing anything at the NFL level. So why did Clyde Edwards-Helaire usurp him? That's Matt's argument. That's fair. That's fair. But the problem was I had heard this before, because he did the same thing with Alvin Kamara a few years ago. He brought up, why couldn't he usurp Jalen Hurd at Tennessee? And then a few years later, he did the same thing with Josh Jacobs. Why couldn't he usurp Damian Harris at Alabama? And it's not about being right or wrong at all. It's not. It's about sensationalizing a false narrative and then pretending like it never happened after you became a truther. That's what kills me. It's sensationalizing. I think at times the listeners of the show forget that whenever Matt is talking, I'm also in the audience listening, just like you. So it's these moments with Clyde Edwards-Helaire that have truly built up for me. They really have. And what did I do? Well, on this episode, I pulled receipts. That's what I did on this episode, because I realized during our mock draft show that Matt didn't want to hear my logic. He didn't want to hear the Andy Reid coach corollary or any advanced metrics or statistics or historical comps or best case scenarios. He dismissed them all right off the bat during our very first debate, so I knew those were no good. He just wants to call Clyde Edwards slow and a product of the LSU offense and a beneficiary of wide open running lanes on podcasts, then rank him nearly inside the top 10 of his dynasty leagues behind closed doors. That's what was irking me. I didn't understand, because that's what initially got me. Because while his rankings are set, he's live on the podcast telling me how wrong I am for buying into a player that has ranked, that he has ranked one spot outside the top 10 of his players in Dynasty before he's even stepped foot on an NFL field, mind you. And as you are well aware, for nearly 4 years, I've been on the receiving end of tons of debates where I took the brunt of the tongue lashings. It's a fact. Go back, listen to episode after episode after episode, where I was told my analysis was baseless, where I was told I was flat out wrong, where I was perpetually talked over. These things built up. But then when I suddenly pull ghosts from out of his closet, I'm the bad guy. I was told I was cherry-picking audio drops. I was cherry-picking audio drops is what I was told. Guys, I'm sorry, but it does not get a whole lot clearer than what I quoted. And my whole life, I've been willing to own my bad calls, my misses, my mistakes. Call me on them. I'm not going to run from them. It's okay. I can deal with them. I'm fine with it. It's part of the gig. If I'm going to open my mouth and make statements boldly, if I'm wrong, fucking bury me. Go get a tractor, dig me a hole, ask me to lay down, and cover me up. I deserve it. But to this day, I still have close friends that call me out for absurd things that I said. I appreciate that about them. Some of the reason that I love these people the most. We laugh about these hysterical things, stupid statements, quotes, facts, not even sports related all the time. I appreciate them for it. And in the end, this is just fantasy football. It's not heart surgery. It's not a life or death crisis. It's a game within a game, as Matt once said. But none of this is what bothered Matt or offended the mob that came after me, the people who attacked me to show their support for him on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Reddit. They were everywhere. No, what offended everyone was that I told Matt that his pre-draft analysis was bad. That's what I said. It came out of my mouth. And maybe it was me sensationalizing the same way that he has in the past. Taking a statement that isn't completely true and riding with it in the heat of the moment. Because spontaneous energy and good radio aren't always so dissimilar. And it happened. Do I really think that Matt is bad at pre-draft analysis? No, of course not. Of course not. Do I think that calling Alvin Kamara the most overrated player in this draft class and by a wide margin was an awful take? Obviously. It was atrocious. It's why he almost fainted live on the show when I pulled it out of his closet. Like a senior portrait. I'm like, hey, look at this. He was shocked. He was shocked by it. Yet what puzzled me about his supporters that attacked me was their agenda. They don't even know why they lunged at me, but they did. Do these guys even get the show? I mean, hear me out. Did these people suddenly forget about when Matt and I shredded Nick Whalen for his bogus analysis? Did these people forget when we destroyed Chad Parsons and Under the Helmet for their youth-only analysis? Did these people forget when we obliterated Matt Waldman for his tape analysis and his giant tube TV? All of which was done publicly on podcasts. That's because these people only love when Matt and I are the World Tag Team Champions. Yet when Matt came under fire, something that he literally never has had happen to him on a show, these people rushed to his defense. Guys, our show, the Sonic Truth Dynasty Podcast, is literally the most divisive and critical fantasy show on the internet. We destroy professional athletes, analysts, regular Joes. Literally, you put it on the show sheet and we gun it down. So do I regret making a statement about Matt being bad at pre-draft analysis? Yes, of course. Because Matt is one of the very best in the industry at fantasy football content creation. He's literally a genius. Again, I told you guys, when I'm on the show, I'm also in the audience. In nearly every episode, he says something that wows me, that I can't even believe he pulled out of thin air, because I can see the show sheet. I know it's not on there. He's literally creating it in his mind instantaneously. And it's why he's one of the best, if not the best. But for anyone to personally attack me, after the 4 years I've spent on this show constantly under duress and handling it like a professional, is hysterical. It's absolutely fucking hysterical. Half of these people would have quit the minute that the mics went live with Matt Kelly. They don't even understand the level of difficulty that it takes to go on a show, have takes, stand by your takes, and know that Matt Kelly is willing to gun you down for them. Don't forget that. And I stand in there episode after episode after episode after episode, and I take it. whatever comes at me. And some episodes have been brutal. You guys have heard them. There have been some absurdly brutal episodes. And what did I do? I came back the next week. I treated it like nothing happened. I've done it forever. And regardless of this speculation that I'm seeing across social media platforms about Nate is probably done on the Sonic Truth podcast, are you guys kidding me? I'm not running from this one either. There's no reason for me to disappear into the horizon. That's not happening. There's people DMing other people, telling them, like almost betting that I'm quitting or something to that nature. Look, I'm not planning on going anywhere, guys. It's absolutely ludicrous that people are even attempting to create more insane theories. I get that for a lot of people, they love the relationship between Matt and I. And for many people, they've noticed that over the past couple of months, things have seemed a bit off. It's an off season. This is how it goes. We typically don't do a show through the off season. Many of you guys may have forgot that. We used to not do a show for like 3 straight months. And then Matt convinced me to come back and do 3 shows every month. I'm an incredibly busy individual, and sometimes I can be selfish with my time. That's why I've tried to give everything I can on this platform to you guys, answer as many questions as I can, post as often as I can. Because I genuinely enjoy it. I really do. And that's why I'm being honest with you. I'm not going to be honest like this on the Sonic Truth podcast. I plan to say my piece next episode, and I absolutely will apologize for what I said to Matt, because I know Matt is a good analyst. He's one of the best in the industry, as I've already stated. But what I don't understand is people's willingness to go to the levels that they go to try to attack and shame and destroy people for something that, again, has to do with fantasy football. It's so odd to me that the audience of this show at times can be so sensitive about a podcast that is so incredibly insensitive at times to other people's feelings. I mean, we've made people quit social media. I mean, it's so crazy to me that this even happened, that it got as far as it did. But I could see Matt was admittedly distraught by my statement. And rightfully so. It was live. It was public. It had never been done to him before. So I get that. So for that, I do apologize. I am remorseful about that. And it won't happen again. And I hope that Matt and I can find a way to balance the show back out and get back to what we used to do, which was tandem analysis. And yeah, I still plan to have wars. I don't plan to agree with him on every topic. I never have and I never will. That will not change. But I wanted to air this out, come clean with you guys, tell you where my baseline was coming from, and just be forthright, because I've watched a lot of people turn their back on me in the past 24 hours, which was shocking. But admittedly, for all the negativity that I've received a wealth of support. I mean, it's, in all honesty, it seems 50-50. For all the people that wanted to see somebody kind of, speak up to Matt Kelly, those people have showered my inbox, have responded to me on Twitter. I'm not responding back to them. I'm not feeding into it, but I appreciate the support. But that's not what I'm trying to do. I do not want to create division on social media. That's not my goal. Of course, I can be a troll. It's how I started in this industry. I'm an outraged Jew. It's in the tag. But I want to make sure that with Matt Kelly, we stay on track. On social media, I'm not creating wars. I'm still probing. Matt posted something today trying to validate that he's a fan of Dalvin Cook. And what do? Just hours after the podcast airs that split the world in half, I respond to his tweet validating his love for Dalvin Cook years ago with, "You're tilting, bro." Because that's what I do. That's what I do. I've done it for years on the podcast. It's my personality. It's the way I'm going to continue to roll. But again, guys, this is my story. This is how it went down. And feel free to respond. Tell me what you think. Tell me how you feel I should respond on the next Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast, because I'd like to know. I'd like your guidance. Give me your opinion. If you've heard it, did I go too far? Was it unfair? Was it justified? Again, I feel remorseful for it, and I will respond appropriately on the next episode. But I wanted to come clean with you guys, give you my point of view, because I respect you and I appreciate everybody in this audience. So tell me what you think. Give me some feedback, and we'll continue to rock and roll. And hopefully we get the fantasy football season that we've all been hoping for.